Friendly Jordies is the channel we're going to be talking about today. It's run by a man named Jordan Shanks, or as many of you probably know him from the Wiki Alpha community, Jordan Sex Money Shanks. And he actually has an entire team of equally ripped immortal alpha deities that are all united by a single goal: to expose corruption in all of its forms and make a mockery out of evil people. That's not exactly the safest mission to embark on here. This is playing life on ultra nightmare mode, really, because he doesn't just go for low-hanging fruit. He targets some of the most nefarious, shady, corrupt organizations and people throughout all of Australia. And he does more than just Australia, but he is from the land down under, so a lot of his content and investigations have been focused on Australia, but has recently branched out into covering some of the most fucked up situations that even I've never heard of before, such as one of his most recent pieces of content called Paradise Bombed, where Jordies and his team covered a disgusting, tragic situation that unfortunately does involve bombing of completely innocent people. And in the very first frame of this video, this is one of Jordies' team members holding a bomb. Like a goddamn corn on the cob. He's just manhandling a bomb while talking about the situation that's going on. If that's not heroic journalism, then I really don't know what is. And another thing that's important to note is that he is constantly villainized, treated like a fucking demon by the media over there for some reason, even though what he's presenting is just immutable facts about awful people that most normal people are rallying behind him for and appreciative of. He and his team do great work, is the point I'm getting at. But I think I'm doing it an injustice by just calling it journalism, because it's a lot more than that. Not only is the investigation and the reporting extremely valuable, but the way he presents it is perfect. He and his team also spend a ton of time crafting really entertaining skits or going hog wild to commit to a bit. So in one of his investigations, he was, this is my favorite, he was doing a deep dive on everything related to a guy named John Barilaro. Eventually this culminated with him finding out that John Barilaro actually rents his very expensive property as an Airbnb. So Jordies, in this very public feud, this wasn't the first time he was investigating Barilaro, in a very public feud, a bunch of back and forth spitting on each other, Jordies just books it for a little while, which has to be a massive security problem. John Barilaro was not some nobody, nothing burger of a person. He had so much fucking power, and he's just renting out his estate for anyone to go in and snoop.
A second house that's so big, it has a second and third house on it. Like Mars's two moons that just got attracted into its gravitational pull. And might I just say, those spare houses are real nice, Giovanni. Yeah, I'm talking directly to you now. Because as you've probably gathered, or haven't because you're that dumb, I'm filming at your estate. And I want you to be the first to know that I f***ed in both your guest houses.
Putting the fear of God in Barilaro right there. He'll never be able to have a peaceful night of sleep again, wondering if there's still Jordan Shanks' DNA just leaving a big old wet spot somewhere in there that hasn't been cleaned by his many assistants. It's amazing. Of an actual just checkmate W move from Jordies here. Just blowing him a kiss saying, "Big McThankies from McShankies, I had sex in your guest houses, and Lord only knows what else went on within those walls." It's so entertaining, and yet presents an extremely important investigation about some fucked up shit. Like, he and his team do outstanding work. I can't stress it enough. And the price he's paid for this is a huge one. He's been threatened more times than Bugs Bunny by Elmer Fudd. He is constantly getting threats from powerful people. He's been sued. Even very recently, he was involved in a defamation case that resulted in Google, YouTube having to pay $715,000 over this defamation case. He was labeled racist or abusive for a series of videos he made talking about a person in power. He's done so many stories about corruption at even the highest level, and most recently, the scariest thing has happened to him. His life was put in jeopardy. His house was firebombed. He made a video going over the situation, but it's also been reported by so many Australian news outlets as well. The situation is as follows. His neighbor's house was firebombed on the 17th of November. It was luckily put out pretty quickly, and then shortly after that, his house was firebombed, and a lot of it was damaged, obviously. Now, this appears to be a deliberate attack. The fact that his neighbors got firebombed and then he did makes it seem like they originally went for him to begin with, but were too stupid to figure out which one was his residence, so they gambled on a 50-50 and lost. I'm going to play you a bit of his interview with the media here when they were waiting for him outside of his house.
I would hope that the New South Wales strike force that is supposedly set up for fixated people and terrorists would be looking into this instead of a comedian and his team for 6 months straight at the whim of a previous premier that all of you defended for his last 10 years, and then when he came out, and even after all the New York stuff, you're still sitting there defending him now. I saw all of your articles today where you all wrote all of the same little narrative that you write every time. I would hope that you would put just as much attention on the fact that that happened as you have on trying to assassinate my character over the last year. Thanks for your time.
Did something happen here a week ago, Jordan?
Now, his real name is Jordan, and even in the face of his life being threatened, he still rolls up calm and collected like Kratos, keeping his slapping hand primed and ready for these media cheeks. And it's not like his anger is misplaced. He has had very less than favorable articles written about him with a lot of labels attached to that, which I don't think are deserved when the entire purpose of Jordy's content recently has been exposing corruption at the highest level, which is an extremely important thing to be doing, where I feel he should be rewarded instead of vilified. But, you know, that's just me. I don't live in Australia here, but he has been treated very poorly by the people that are now standing outside of his home, showing no empathy at all. No sympathy at all, just trying to circle around like vultures on roadkill to get their scoop for their clicks, and he rightfully is upset at them and points out a bit of the hypocrisy surrounding it. And now his life is in danger, and it's hard to say who's responsible for the attack. He mentions in the same clip that because he's been doing reporting on, you know, a lot of corruption at a very high level, it's hard to say who actually may have carried out the attack.
Obviously, we've done some extremely dangerous reporting over the last year, I suppose, of a bunch of extremely powerful people and corporations. There is many people that would want to do that. I obviously can't say who I suspect it is, but I do have like a short list in my head of who I think would have done it.
What a horrifying situation for anyone to be in, and yet somehow Jordy's maintains a very composed demeanor. He continues joking throughout the rest of the video, even joking about the situation, and somehow staying like calm and collected, which is baffling. Friendly Jordies yesterday posted a video where he had to publicly admit defeat at the hands of this corruption, unfortunately.
You might have noticed that we haven't been releasing videos after the police arrested a suspect for the firebombing of my house. While we're very grateful for their persistence throughout this ordeal, we felt it would be prudent to see what the response would be from certain individuals.
They did finally make an arrest on one of the suspects responsible for the firebombing of his house. It took about a year, but better late than never. Rather be tardy to the party than not show up at all. At least it's seeming like crime won't pay. They won't get away with this, right? Wrong! Idiot! Stupid! Can you stop sipping on your moron potion for a second? Put the stupid juice down? Of course the criminals are gonna get away with it, because I guess that's just the way things go in New South Wales. At least when it comes to criminals of this caliber. The very powerful ones, who are just seemingly above the law.
Their response has been one of rather perplexing confidence. Buoyed by the lack of further arrests, they have decided to be much more blunt with their requests, threatening anyone they believe had handed over information to assist with the creation of the video Coronation. This video detailed links former Deputy Premier John Barilaro had with development company Coronation Property. The video encompassed more than Coronation Property Associates. It included an array of spirited characters, many of whom were enraged with its release. Police have made it very clear that many of the prime suspects in the firebombing are in that video.
The video he's talking about here is a video Friendly Jordies and his team released called Coronation, and this shit was so hot it'd leave the toilet bowl steaming. It was massive. Friendly Jordies and his team released a firebomb of their own with this one here. Coronation highlights a lot of horrible things going on with a lot of very scary and powerful people doing bad shit. And they were not happy that this video got posted, and it put a target on Friendly Jordies' back, because this was a big deal. It caused a lot of ripples, and it made him public enemy number one of this group of people.
Now, over a year later, these figures are once again venting, threatening dire consequences if the video isn't taken down. Given these people's colourful history, we don't consider these to be idle threats. Naturally, we contacted the appropriate authorities, but it appears these men have engulfed the state in a state of fear. It appears these men are indeed above the law. It appears these men are free to point the scythe at anyone they wish, blackmail them with the most heinous, violent acts imaginable, and there is not an authority in the land powerful enough, or perhaps foolhardy enough, to check them.
Just tragic. Where do you go when the authorities abandon you? What are you supposed to do when the people that are supposed to protect you refuse to, because the people that are coming after you are stronger than them and out of their reach, just untouchable? What can you possibly do besides just comply?
But if the content of coronation is to fall on willfully deaf ears, if its only tangible result is the death of innocent people, we will not have their lives hang on our conscience. In other words, you win. We're taking down the video. Congratulations, you run this city.
It's sad because it's such an important piece of investigative journalism, but it's also the only choice they could make in this situation. This isn't a group that's making idle threats. They have already firebombed twice, and they have a history of doing a lot more, as was highlighted by Jordies and his team. So they did the only thing they could when faced against this enemy. They just complied. They took down that video. Coronation, the video that he had to take down, is re-uploaded 1,000 times already. So it's not like completely dead and buried or anything like that. And I saw a lot of people saying this could actually, start the Streisand effect here on this and have even more eyes on this group, which I guess is possible. But I think the big victory for them is that they've shown that they can kind of bully and strong-arm anyone with impunity. They can't be touched by authorities. They just have this green light to do whatever they want with no repercussions. So they're able to force Jordies to take down a video they didn't like. And they're just demonstrating that power here. And I think that's kind of what they were aiming to do. Not so much shut down the information, because I'm sure they knew that this was just going to be re-uploaded, but it's just kind of letting Jordies and pretty much everyone else know that they can do what they want. And it's very fucking scary just how powerful they are. And now, almost 3 years later, there is someone who has been arrested for this.
Some not-so-breaking news. One of the guys that firebombed my house back in 2022 has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, I'm grateful to the judge, the arson squad, and the financial crimes unit for all their hard work in securing this little bit of justice. That was a Herculean slog for the investigators to get it to that point at all, but this is hardly a definite end to this saga, and there are a few things that really need to be said in wake of this conviction.
The man who was arrested and now facing 5 years in the slammer is an associate of a well-known crime family in the area. His name is Tuffy, or Toofy, Goofy, whatever the fuck it is, however you say his name. He's 39 years old, and they're describing it as a professional attack on a journalist. But don't worry, he's not a monster. He has a lot of remorse here. He feels really bad about it. He even made an apology video for it. So he is clearly feeling a lot of sorrow for his misdeeds, no doubt. In a video he sent from prison, he said, "I would just like to apologize from the bottom of my heart." Aww. Alright. Not guilty. Free this man. He clearly feels bad about firebombing 2 people's homes. He's no longer a threat. He's seen the error of his ways. That is a touching sentiment. He went on to say that he believed in God and said he was over his life of crime after spending so much of his 20s and 30s behind bars. Quote, "I'd rather die than return back to jail," he said. He's turning a new leaf. You can clearly see it here. I mean, it's just an honest mistake. Who hasn't accidentally firebombed 2 people's homes after being paid to throw those firebombs in the first place? It could happen to anybody. And this is a guy who clearly recognizes that these evil deeds are best left in the past. And it's crazy that he's only getting 5 years, by the way. He is a career criminal, and he's still getting 5 years after firebombing 2 people's homes, which is literally like attempted murder. At least it should be.
It does, however, open a big question, a question which was not satisfactorily answered in court, and perhaps even more shamefully, not examined by most of the media. Why would a man with no connection to me whatsoever go to the effort of stealing a Mercedes, cloning number plates, surveilling my house, and then setting that house on fire?
As Friendly Jordies points out here, it's very interesting that the judge recognizes this as a professional attack, a coordinated attack here on Friendly Jordies. They even call him the Muscle. That's what he was hired to do. Yet, at no point do they try and inquire as to who hired him and why. What were his motives? Why would someone whom Jordy has never heard of, never mentioned at all, go through so much effort to firebomb his fucking house? That's awfully strange, right? Isn't that a little weird? They fully recognize that this was a paid, planned attack on Friendly Jordies, yet don't bother to try and uncover who planned and paid for this attack. This was clearly a planned attack, and they recognize that, yet don't even give the slightest smidgen of effort to try and figure out who's behind it. That definitely smells a bit fishy.
I think I know the answer. I'd wager some prominent defamation lawyers, property developers, and politicians also know the answer. There were some unsurprisingly cowardly and oblique hints of an answer in the ABC article about the conviction, an article which refers to me as an internet personality. Mr. Shanks, who uses the moniker Friendly Jordies online, had mentioned the Alameddine crime network in a video 2 months before his home was set alight. Just mention the Alameddines. A lot of people mention the Alameddines, Anton. The Alameddine crime network might be one of the most prolific gangs in this nation's history. They're nightly news. Some people bank their entire journalistic careers on talking about the Alameddines. They don't get their houses burnt down. How characteristically low from the ABC, especially when even the judge labelled the firebombing as, quote, a professional attack on a journalist. Anton here acts as if it was a coincidence after reading out a BuzzFeed article on a stream.
I found this fascinating. What Jordies is mentioning here is that some journalists, like the one he's pointing out, are making the insinuation that because Jordies has mentioned the Alameddine crime family before, prior to his house being set ablaze, that maybe it's not a coinky-dink. Maybe the two are related. But Jordies hits him with the counterpoint here. He gets him with the Uno reverse with some very basic logic that the Alameddine crime family is one of the most infamous in the area, talked about daily as a piece of nightly news, where tons of journalists make their whole career solely around reporting on the Alameddine crime family, and yet none of them seem to be getting fucking napalm striked here like Jordies was. So it's a pretty weak insinuation to make that doesn't pass the smell test, especially because it's not like that's all Friendly Jordies talks about is the Alameddine crime family or anything like that.
This is not at all to excuse Toofy Jr. He tried to kill someone. He burnt down a house with no regard for not only the other potential occupants, but neighbours, which were the elderly, and for all he knew, could have been children. Even worse, because his motives are murky and seemingly transactional, he seems to have just been waved away with he was just the hired muscle. He tried to kill people. He burnt down a house. Things are a little bit scary in New South Wales if you ask me. At this point, you can order a firebombing, not only not get caught, but the muscle who does get caught gets about the same time as it takes to do a bachelor's degree.
The guy responsible for double-fisting firebombs that could have killed multiple people is getting an extremely light, soft sentence of just 5 years, which is basically just the amount of time between Stranger Things seasons. And not only is he getting a light sentence, but the people that hired him, that they openly are saying that he was the muscle. So they recognize he was the muscle for someone, but the people that he is the muscle for, they're not even bothering to try and investigate and find out the identity of. They're just like, oh yeah, he was the muscle, and that's it. That's as far as we're gonna go. It's just so blatant. It's so obvious. It's so fun.
How can a man be charged and sentenced to 5 years in prison for a firebombing and the courts get to know nothing about his motives? Why are certain politicians like Rose Jackson, who originally condemned the firebombing, albeit in the most performative Twitter-approved template that not only was mostly about her and how awesome she thinks she is, she also just had to add, right after I was nearly killed, that I'm, quote, way off and gross. I'll tell you what I think is way off, Rose. Hanging out with and propping up a development company which, again, shares the name of the video I was forced to remove due to death threats, and doing so knowingly. You know. That's what I think is gross, you self-aggrandizing transactional party machine cog.
Yeah, over there, Jordies has got a lot of very powerful enemies. And it is very clear that they are willing to go to extreme lengths to silence Jordies and his team. Keep in mind, the firebombing attack, they didn't know Jordies wasn't home. They had no idea. They also didn't know about the neighbors' whereabouts if they were home. That very well could have ended with bodies. Just corpses. Charred corpses from this hired muscle coming out and firebombing these two houses, all to silence Jordies and his team for their reporting on the blatant corruption over there.
Why do the Alameddines, an organised crime gang, give so much access to certain ABC journalists? Why is the ABC so ardent in defending these certain journalists? And why isn't anyone able to get enough evidence to bring whoever ordered the firebombing into a courtroom? I'll tell you, there's some very strange things happening in New South Wales.
Very strange things indeed going on over there. I'm happy to at least see that someone was arrested in connection to the firebombing. That's good. 5 years is kind of laughable considering the crime. But I mean, I guess at least there was some semblance of, like, you know, catching the bad guys here to a certain extent. But there is a lot of work to be done. I feel like there was definitely a lot more that should have come from this. And hopefully it will. Hopefully there will be more that comes from this, God willing. Because holy shit, it is unhinged.